AM. Only the married people. Ken, come sit beside me. You're my left hander and he's my right hander. M, who here? M? Yeah. That's too comfortable for me. Soft. I'll wake up when it's too
Brothers, brothers and sisters, aloha. Welcome to the BUA HSA Student Advisory Council Meet Your Vice President of Academics. This is an information session on the new academic term structure for starting next year. My name is EJ Hernandez from the Philippines, and I'm the Senior Vice President for BUA HSA Student Advisory Council. And we would like to recognize the presence of our Vice President of Academics, Brother Max Checkets. And also, we would like to recognize our membership of the Student Advisory Council team. They are in the gray shirts, and also our student program director. Um, we we would like to thank you all for your attendance. I know it's really a sacrifice for you to come here, but thank you very much. This is a very important session. Today we will be having about 30 to 40 minutes of discussion given by Vice President Checkets about the new term starting next year. There will also be 15 to 20 minutes of questions and answers. We encourage everyone who would like to ask a question during the Q&A session to use the microphone located here on your left, on your right rather, sorry. Before we and Before we begin with the prayer, our SAC team are now passing out a mini 2012 academic calendar as well as a survey sheet. You will see on that pamphlet or the flyer, that's the new academic calendar. Okay, before we begin with an opening prayer. We would like to just distribute this, and afterwards we will begin with a prayer to be given by Brother Sudak. Brother. I apologize. Thank you. Sudakar. All right. And afterwards, I will introduce you, Brother Checkets. Thank you very much.
Father in heaven, we bow before thee at this time and express our gratitude for the day that thou hast given to us. Grateful for thy love and thy protection, Father, and helping us to be here at this time to listen from the check-ins about academic changes and help us, Father, that we can have that spirit throughout this day, that we can able to share that love towards each and everyone who will meet today, and bless us that we can able to follow in thy way and thy path. We need thy love and thy spirit to be with us, and we ask for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
We'd like to thank Connie Pula, who's said opening prayer. Let me just introduce to you now Vice President Checkets. Brother Checkets actually worked for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints now for 30 years. 26 of those years were from BYU, Idaho, and formerly called Ricks College. He is now in his 4th year serving here at BYU Hawaii as the Vice President of Academics. He is married, has a wonderful wife who is the State Relief Society President of the BYU Hawaii 3rd State. They are blessed with 6 children and 13 grandchildren. Brother Checket's background, which is interesting to a number of students, he is actually an animal scientist, which is a funny kind of background in BYU Hawaii. I wonder if he would allow us to own a pet dog here in BYU Hawaii. His 2 hobbies, his hobby is farming, and he likes to run 4-wheelers. He has mentioned that one of his fondest experiences here in BYU Hawaii is the opportunity to meet with students. And for that, we are indeed grateful for his presence today to talk to us about the new academic term structure that will be starting next year, 2012. Brothers and sisters, without further ado, Brother Max Checkets, Vice President of Academics.
See, I'm not an engineer. That's what happens when you're tall. You like finishing this. When I was at BYU, Idaho, we were at a banquet, and Elder Bednar was providing a message. It was Elder Bednar, 2 days, not a problem. And I would get up and do some presentations, and we had a mic that had a squeak in it. So after a while, he told me to quit adjusting the mic so we quit squeaking. That probably worked. Thank you. All right. Can you hear me okay? All right. Well, it's good to be with you. I'd like to get to know this group just a little bit if I can, so I'm going to ask just a couple of questions. How many of you have been here both spring term and obviously you're here now in first term? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So most of you. How many of you have taken at least 12 credits or more in the combination of those 2 terms? Raise your hand. Okay, so not quite the same number, but a pretty good number. All right. Is there anyone in here who would like to take a guess about how many students we denied from admissions starting this fall? Anyone want to take a guess? Somebody know? How many? 5,000. Well, that's a little high. Yes. 2,000? That's closer. We denied 1,600 students this fall who wanted to come. Now, we'd love to have them. Probably by far the majority of them academically were qualified. They were qualified ecclesiastically. In other words, they were worthy. So in every way they qualified to come. The only reason they can't come is because of a very obvious reason. We do not have space for them. Now, next question is, what is our limiting factor currently at this institution? What resource is our limiting resource? Does anyone know? Housing. Housing is our limiting resource. I've estimated we could take almost another 100 students, it's not a lot, but we could take about another 100 students in terms of our classroom space and our faculty resource. Now, it would push our faculty resource, and so some of them would probably not be real happy with me, but we could do it. They would do it because they love students and they would love to help another 100 students. But the truth is we can't even take that extra 100 students because we don't have housing. Now, many of you might not know that we've been working very hard over the last quite a few years, but certainly the last 2 years, and we do have some permissions to do some renovations and some replacement of some of the hollies. President's, that's kind of really, he's the one that has taken the lead with that. We've all helped him. So we're very excited about that possibility. But in reality, that alone will not add capacity for more students. What we're really going to do is be building new hollies, and then once they're built, we'll tear down some of the old hollies because they're old and they need to be replaced. But then the next phase, there's actually 3 phases we're working on. The second phase, we would be able to actually build more housing, and in that second phase, hopefully add about another 1,000 students to campus. Now, if you set housing aside for just a second, if you start to look at the campus as a whole, what do you think the #1 cost is of, and this is true of any campus, what do you think the biggest expense is to your higher education? Anybody? I'm sorry? Oh, tuitions, that's a revenue source. I'm talking about the actual cost that your tuition might pay for. What do you think the biggest cost is? Salaries. Okay, I heard someone say it. That's right. Salaries is the biggest cost. And that's true of any institution. It usually runs somewhere between 60 and 80%, somewhere in that neighborhood, of the cost of higher education are in salaries. Not just for the faculty member, although they are by far the largest segment, but also for the rest of the people that work at the institution. All right, what do you think the second largest cost is by kind of a large category? Facilities. Yeah, it's facilities. Okay. Now, if you were managing this place and you had President Hinckley give you these 3 imperatives, this might just keep wandering on me. Maybe I'll just hold it here. I think that's whoa, there we go. President Hinckley gave President Wheelwright 3 imperatives. Okay, does anyone know what they are by chance? Okay, students. Glad you know too. Okay, the first imperative that he gave to President Wheelwright was to serve more students. Okay. The second imperative he gave to him was to control or reduce the cost of education, not just to the church, but to the student as well. Okay. And I use the term control rather than reduce because with inflation, if we can just keep the cost relatively stable, we're already going to be reducing and controlling it. I'll talk just a little bit about that in a minute. The third imperative was to improve the overall experience that the student has. Now that doesn't mean just in the classroom or just at the dances or just at the athletic events. It means everywhere. Anytime we have a chance to improve the experience you have here, we would like to try to improve that. We're very committed to that. It takes time. Higher education is a very interesting business. I've had people who've asked me if they should go on for a doctorate. Okay? How many of you in here plan on going on as far as getting a PhD? A few of you do. The number one thing I can tell you is if you decide to start a PhD, then you're going to have to be prepared to persist through the hoops that people throw at you. Some of them don't even make sense at times. We know even here on our campus, there are times that as a student you go, why do they ask me to do this? And you just go and do it because someone asked you to do that. We realize that. We are trying to eliminate those barriers, if you will, so that we can improve your experience. One of the ways we're doing it is we expect that you are capable of doing much more for yourself. So when it comes to things like registering, who should be the responsible person for registering for your classes? You should be. When you go and see an advisor, I'm going to challenge all of you to do this. Don't even set up an appointment to go see an advisor until you have whatever information you can glean yourself, so that when you sit down with the advisor, you can have a meaningful experience. You see, you have a responsibility to do those kind of things. Okay? Now, what they asked me to speak about today was the calendar in 2012. And I'm going to talk about the broad calendar, so go ahead and we'll call that up here. Because you have to understand the broad calendar before we can talk really just about the summer part of that. Remember the three imperatives, all right? We know the limiting factor is housing. Do we saturate housing in the fall? Absolutely, and then some. Do we do it in winter? Not quite, but close. But what about summer? There's quite a bit of, we still have lots of housing that we can use in the summer, okay? So, remembering the three imperatives, let's talk about how we now created the calendar. What we want to do is we want to have 3 semesters, okay? So think semesters, don't think terms. A term is independent of a semester. So in reality, the first thing that I can tell you is this is the last term that BYU Hawaii is going to offer, the one you're currently in. There are no more terms per se. Now don't get too alarmed yet, because mostly it's a name change. But in reality, this is the last term. It's independent of any semester, okay? We want 3 semesters. We want those 3 semesters, they're not going to be equal necessarily, but we want to make sure that they have, you have the same opportunity in summer as you would have in fall or winter. The same type of opportunities to continue to improve, to get the classes you need and so forth. Does that mean you'll have available all the same classes? No. In fact, you don't have all the same classes between fall and winter. So that's not what I'm saying. But if I were to ask, I'll bet there's a lot of you that would have liked to have taken a majors course, any majors course, and it might not have been offered this summer. Okay, does that make sense? So what we're trying to do is find a way to offer more majors courses in the summer and to offer more 300 and 400 level courses in the summer. About 2 years ago, when I was working with the department chairs, I asked them, I said, well, what are the roadblocks? Why can't we offer more of these kind of courses to the students? And the first thing they said is they said, well, some of these courses, we don't feel like we can teach them in 7 weeks because the amount of learning that takes place and the difficulty and all of that, it's just too short. It just, you know, they were empathetic for you. You know, they didn't want to kill you. Okay? Do you believe that faculty are nice? I mean, they really are. So we started looking at this calendar, and again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I want to make this point before I get back to the overall calendar. So one of the things we decided we wanted to do was to create a summer calendar that would allow faculty to bridge courses between the first half and the second half, what you used to know as terms, what I will now call sessions, okay? Or you might call them blocks. Sometimes people call them blocks. We're okay with that. And in reality, then they still have 14 weeks, okay? So hopefully they don't have the argument that they can't teach a course because they don't have 14 weeks to teach it now. But they're going to teach it in these 2 halves, okay? All right, coming back to the general calendar. So one of the things we decided is we wanted all the semesters to be 14 weeks long. So you can look at the calendar, the one in your hand, the one up here, and you can count. The yellows are the winter semester. If you count them, there are 14 weeks there. The peach colored in the middle is summer semester. There are 14 weeks there. The green down at the bottom is fall. There are 14 weeks there. Every semester will start on what day of the week? A Monday, every one of them. Okay, that's going to be one of the rules. There's actually a pattern. We patterned this out for 10 years, so we know we can keep this pattern going. You actually start creating this calendar by working from General Conference in April. The reason why is because right after General Conference, we have a pretty significant event around here. What's it called? Graduation. Okay, we like to graduate students. It can't happen on the week of General Conference. Why? It's really a bad idea to have a graduation when all of the church leaders are saying, please come to conference or listen to conference. So obviously they're not going to let us do it on that week. Also, we usually have a general authority who's coming here. So the way we build this calendar is we start from General Conference and we have graduation the Saturday following General Conference. Then we work back 14 weeks, and that's the first day of winter semester. We have a week that we break, and then we start summer semester. And then there's a 5-week break in the middle of summer. We have another 7 weeks of summer semester. We have a week break, and then we have fall semester, which goes 14 weeks. And so then there are a couple of things that can happen. There are a few years where you can have 6 weeks break in the summer. There's only a couple like that. And if you have a 6-week break in the summer, you only have a 2-week break at Christmas. If you have a 5-week break in summer, then you have a 3-week break at Christmas. So that's kind of the way the pattern works throughout the calendar. Okay? Any questions about that? I can take maybe one right just quickly about that. That's the overall calendar and the way, that's how it was originally created. Okay, so fall and winter, what's different about fall and winter? Fall and winter are 1 day longer than they are this year. So that's all. For classes, they're 1 day longer. For actual, the calendar, they end up being 2 days longer. Okay, but you have one more class on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, one more class on a Tuesday, Thursday class. That's what's changed. Jennifer? Yes, and then the finals, we're going to 3 days. We want to give you a little more time to really toughen up, to really, get yourself psyched out and do well on those tests. All right? So let's go to summer then and spend just a little bit of time talking about summer. We'll have 3 different entry times for the university. So as a new freshman or a transfer student, you can now come 3 different times to the university. You can come at the beginning of any of one of the 3 semesters, fall, winter, or summer. We won't have a planned entrance time for first term like we do this year. We won't do that anymore. Okay? Now, what if you happen to be a return missionary and you come home in September? What could you do? Well, if you came home in September, then you could go to second block, right? In the fall, we have a block, a few classes, not a lot, not much option, but you can do that. You can do the same thing in winter. Technically, you can do the same thing still in summer. So you can still enroll for classes. But what you need to do is you need to be planning earlier, because it's just like if you were coming home in the middle of fall. If you come that last part of summer, you'll have lots more classes to choose from, but you have to plan earlier because it is truly a semester starting in 2012. Okay? There will be classes in kind of 3 time frames. There'll be classes that start in April and in June. There'll be classes that start in July, after the 5-week break and the end of August. And there'll be classes that start in April and end in August. Okay? We call those bridge courses. Those are those that I told you that need to be 14 weeks long. So what are the kind of courses that I think would be good courses to be that way? Well, it could be any course, but you can think language courses. It's kind of hard to really just, get a language really fast, so that might be good. In fact, this year we've tried some language courses over that 14-week format. Is anyone in here in one of them? Okay, a few of you are. So we're going to be asking you some questions. Math is another one that's hard sometimes to digest in just a short time frame. Some of the science courses, especially with certain kind of labs or experiments, can be kind of difficult, okay? But really it can be a lot of upper division courses are more challenging, and skill-based classes, they need more time so that you can develop those skills. So that's what we're trying to do in those. Okay. So in 2012, do we have any terms? No. Okay. The computer calls them sessions. I find myself calling them blocks more often than I do sessions, but they'll either be called sessions or blocks. All right? Obviously, one of the questions that we were asked is where we can find more information about this. This is on the website, and in fact, all the calendars that we have are on the website. We try to do about 2 calendar years ahead on the website. We just barely approved 2013's calendar, so probably within a week or so it will be up there also, so you can see how those dates play out for your planning. But if you go into the website and under academics, you can go down to calendars and schedules, academic calendars and schedules, and you'll get this and a few other things. One of the other questions that students ask is, where are the deadlines? It's on the same side. Okay, in fact, most of the deadlines, the really significant ones, are on the side of the calendar here, so you can see those deadlines. Okay? Next question had to do with, what about other schools and universities? A 3-year bachelor's degree is becoming increasingly popular across the United States. We didn't invent it. Probably some of the first schools that really worked on it probably were 15, 16 years ago, but there were a number of schools that started in earnest about 10 years ago, and within the last 5 years, an increasing number of schools are going to the 3-year bachelor's format. And again, one of the main reasons why is because even though President Hinckley gave those imperatives to President Wheelwright, I've seen those same 3 issues. They were reworded a little differently, but they've been given as a charge to a lot of people in higher education. I just last week, there's a common journal I read about higher education. I just read the list now of all the schools whose tuition for 1 year exceeds $40,000. It's almost doubled in the last 3 years. Okay? So it's not just like the Harvards and Yales now that are in that elite group of expensive institutions. There are quite a few private institutions that their tuition has gone up to try to balance. We're not going to do that. Okay? You pay a little over $2,000 for tuition, which obviously is one of the best bargains in higher education. In fact, it's even a worry for us that it's so low, because occasionally we have students that come here for the wrong reason. Because if the reason you came was because it was the cheapest place, then you came for the wrong reason. Now mind you, we're glad it's cheap. We're going to try to keep it so that it's not a burden for your family. But we hope you came here because you wanted to associate with other young people who had similar values and beliefs, because you wanted to get a good, strong education that you wanted to prepare for the rest of your future, to be a leader, if you will, okay? Not because it's cheap, all right? The reason it's not expensive, there are 2 reasons it's not expensive, 2 broad reasons. The first is we have been and obviously will continue to manage the universities in ways to try to keep the overall cost down, all right? And that takes a lot of effort, but we're committed to it. And so we're at one of those schools that charges $40,000+ a year for tuition or for cost. Their cost will cost close to what they charge in tuition. Okay, so their cost will be, in some cases, it's less than what they charge for tuition, because what they do is they take some of the tuition, and what do you think they do with it? They give it back to the students in the form of scholarships and grants, okay? So it's a bit of a game that they play. It's a known game, it's not some secret, but their costs are probably close to $30,000. Our costs here are less than $20,000. In fact, we've been able to drop the cost at BYU Hawaii by almost $3,000 over the last 4 years. We're now less than $15,000 is what the cost is per student. Okay? And that's good. The way we've dropped the cost, very interesting. You might say, well, what'd you do? Did you reduce services? Did you reduce budgets? Well, we did a little bit of that. There's no question. We had a little bit of fat in the seams that we could kind of take out and give back to the church. There was some. But the biggest way we've reduced cost is we've brought in more students, and so we can allocate the cost across more students. Okay, that's the best way to do it. It's the best way. Now, we don't want to do that in a way that we reduce quality. We want to do it in a way that you just, those of you who are single, just have more girls and boys to check for your mate. You know, that's what we really want to do. So, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up, right? Okay, we're not there yet, because right now we have just slightly over half as many students in summer as what we have in fall or winter. We need to have more students in summer. Our attempt with this calendar is to do that very thing then, to have a larger population of students in the summer. Now, I know that you're going to have some questions for which I can't answer at this moment, so I'll mention some things that we're still wrestling with and working on. One of them, for example, is people ask me, I can answer part of this, but they ask me, so are we going to be forced to go to summer? Okay? And the answer I like to give is no, you have your agency. Okay? But there will be consequences. All right? So if you choose not to go summer, there are consequences. The most obvious consequences is you won't qualify for scholarships. That's the most obvious consequence. Okay? And I don't know the details yet. We're working to refine that. But if you don't go summer, then obviously we think we should give the scholarship to people who are helping with the process of getting in school, getting out, so that another student can come in and have that experience. If we need to, we'll have another meeting later, and I'll be happy to share what we end up with on that. Okay? Some of you probably know that we've been using a 40-hour rule for about the last 18 months. And to qualify for scholarships over the previous year, you had to have accumulated at least 40 credits. That would be 14 credits in fall and winter and 12 credits in summer. So that's been in place. We're working to refine that and simplify that a little bit and so forth. But that's going to be one of the issues. I know it's going to be one of the issues, so I'll just tell you it's out there. You have to remember, a scholarship's a gift, right? And so the scholarships are a carrot to help encourage you to help so that you can go through this process. One of the issues that I'll just mention that someone had asked about is Pell Grants. We were very excited because a couple of years ago the federal government allowed us to do something that was very helpful for those of us that are on a 3-year program, those of you who are U.S. or domestic students. Because you could get 2 semesters worth of Pell Grant, and then as long as you completed 75% of your coursework and you met all the requirements of that, they would close that out as your Pell year and let you reapply to start another Pell year for the 3rd semester. Okay? Unfortunately, there's a lot of for-profits now in higher education, and they kind of ruined it for us because they started taking a lot of money out of the federal government. Huge. Hundreds of millions of dollars went through this process. So now the federal government has rescinded that process. And so now they're going back to the former way of distributing Pell dollars. So you qualify for Pell dollars, and then you have a choice. You can use them in 2 semesters, or you can use them across 3 semesters. So you can decide how you help allocate those across semesters. Because of that, we are trying as an institution to do 2 things in terms of how to help financially those of you who are from the U.S. One is we're trying to increase the number of scholarship dollars that will be available in summer. Okay? We think that would be helpful. So because there aren't Pell dollars maybe, then you'll have more scholarship dollars. The second thing we're doing is we're looking at the possibility with the other BYUs of starting up our own student loan program. So it's not one that's administered by the U.S. government and all of that process, but rather one that's administered through the commissioner's office and through the church. to you, it'll probably not be, won't be really all that big of a change. It's kind of more how we do it. But I can tell you that the brethren are very concerned about students that accumulate way too much debt. And the kind of thing they're concerned about are students who they can go get a Stafford loan and for $10,000, and so they get a Stafford loan and they go buy a new stereo with it, or they upgrade their car, or they take a trip, or whatever. You know, that really is not wise. So we'll probably have a little more restrictions on the private loan program because it will be used for just your education. But clearly, using loans to help get your education is a wise investment in your future. Okay? I had a question about summer term. Obviously, I've already made it really clear there are no terms, right? But there's no real summer session anymore in terms of the way we had this year. So there's spring, summer, and first term this year. Next year there's going to be summer semester with a 5-week break between them. There's no session per se in that 5-week break. We think there will be some classes offered, not by full-time faculty, but some of our adjunct faculty they want to teach, like high school teachers that are off during that period of time. They want to teach, and so we'll try to offer some courses if you have an interest in some of those things. But for the most part, there won't be many options in that break for classes. All right, we've looked at a lot of scenarios. We think it shouldn't hamper anybody in terms of your graduation dates. You know, that's one of the questions. We think that will work just fine. We had some questions about athletes. Coach Wagner and I are looking at some issues around athletes and just exactly what that means. I don't have all the answers there. We will be getting back to you on that one. Obviously, we have to comply with the NCAA guidelines. We can apply stricter guidelines, but we want to decide which way we're going to go, so I can't give you much about that at this point in time. Okay. I think those were the biggest questions that I had submitted from you. So, yes, Jennifer.
Full-time tuition would be 12 credits, but if you drop below that, then it actually goes to part-time, just like the fall of the major. So that is something to be aware of.
Right, which is kind of good, but it is something you have to be aware of. You know, because it's a semester, you can take 15 credits or more if you want to across that whole sequence in those 3 different formats of classes. But it is a semester, so it means some things will be different, and your staffs will be different. It doesn't mean that you'd have to reapply to the university. We're working on that right now, because that doesn't mean we're going to, take you off of the roles of matriculated student or whatever. Basically, I think the way the rule will go is if you're gone for 2 consecutive semesters, then you'd have to reapply, is what would happen. So you'll still be here. You can get registered again for the next available semester. So. All right, let's open up for questions that you might have that I've somehow missed, and I'm happy to try to answer, or I can get Jennifer to help answer for me. So. Yes?
Since there's 3 semesters, would it be more accurate to call
Great question. I'm okay with that. Although it's interesting, most of the schools still call them semesters. And I think the reason why is because the notion of a trimester more in high school, in secondary education as opposed to the trimester is a different concept because it actually doesn't give you any more education than 2 semesters. It's just the way they calendar the 3. So we actually think about it, but we think the confusion would be enough that we're going to stay with the semester title and just say we have 3 semesters. Yes?
So you're graduating in April, but you're supposed to stay for one more class during the term, but now there's no more terms. Do you have to stay till September when that class is over? You still have one class after the fall.
Right. As long as the class is offered in the first part of that summer, you'll just have to stay until June, and then you'll be able to finish. So, you're asking me to make a guess, but I'm happy to make a guess. I would guess that this first year, 80, maybe even as many as 90% of the classes will be taught very much like they were this year in spring and first term. Okay, so there'll be a lot of them that'll still be 7 weeks. We're going to push the faculty to try some of them that will be these bridging courses. It will be a new experience for all of us, and so, but it won't be in any way the majority, so you should be fine if that's what you need to do. Yes?
I don't know how it is for the dorms, but for CPA, currently we have to do 2 of the 3 terms sustaining CPA. So how will it work with this summer?
Yeah, what we're still, again, trying to wrestle with some of that. Jennifer, you want to? Yeah, I think one way to think about this, just to add to it, because that is correct, is you have to have at least 36 hours, within the year. And again, it's better if you're closer to 40. But we're working on some of that. But the second thing that they'll look at is you probably have to be registered for at least part of all 3 of the semesters. So you wouldn't have to be registered in the summer for both halves necessarily, but you would have to be registered at least in part of it. So. Yes, go ahead. Thank you. Yes, I've already asked that question, and as soon as we can guarantee to have at least 200 graduates, then we will go to a summer graduation. So we won't have one in 2012. That's already been decided. I doubt we'll have one in 2013. I think we will shoot for 2014 to have a summer graduation. 2013 is still a question. But obviously, our intent is to have 3. But obviously, if it's a small group, we don't want to do that because they would miss them. Rather than do that, we'll just encourage them to graduate either way. They can always march 1 semester before they graduate, and so they can still have that experience even though they might not finish up the classes until the end of August. But our plan is to have 3 graduations. Yes? Wonderful question. Sister Elaine does a lot of work helping me and helping the institution, working with chairs and others to try to manage the curriculum. And so right now, literally it's been one of the biggest questions we've been talking about this week and we'll continue to talk about for the next 6 weeks. We are going to be asking our department chairs to tell us what they're going to be teaching next summer, so that hopefully as a student and as advisors, you will know when you register for your winter classes, what you can expect will be in summer. Because we think that will help you, because then you could say, okay, let's see, I can get this class in summer, but I can't get this class, so let me take this class in winter, and I'll get that class in summer. Does that make sense? So our pattern we're going to try to do, and again, be patient with us. This is changing mindset, but we do believe in it. We're going to try to always have 2 semesters worth of information for you when you register. So when you register for fall, you'll know fall and winter. When you register for winter, you'll have winter, summer. When you register for summer, you'll have summer, fall. And then that way you can do a little bit of planning. Now, we're not there yet, and Jennifer's over here trembling, but that's what I'm expecting. So.
requirement sheets, a catalog. This might change from year to year, right? How a summer class might be. So when you look at a major requirement sheet, when you look at the catalog in the future, what you're going to find is it winter, is it fall, is it summer? But Mapper will be the place where then, on a year-to-year basis, Brother Check has said that the more nuanced information, is it a bridge class, is it a first session class, is it a second session class, that by the fall before we should have the departments committing themselves to what they're planning. That's what we're doing.
Thank you. I should introduce Sister Lane, Jennifer Lane, to you. She is my associate academic vice president. I have two of them. Brother Compton's the other one. And the truth is I just sit in my office now. They do all the work. So I appreciate she knows this well. She's working very hard to help us work all these details around classes and curriculum out. So that's why I'm always glad to defer to her. She knows more of the details. Yes?
Brother Chuckett, so this year, 2011, I just noticed that there are 6 weeks during the summer, giving the IWork students the opportunity to work for 6 weeks. And then I kind of compared it with next year, and it's only 5 weeks. Is it more of a benefit for IWork students then, or what's the
Yeah. You bet. It's a great question. You have to again think back about the whole calendar. We're adding 2 days to each of the 3 semesters. So if you add 2 days to each of the 3 semesters out of the whole year, in essence, you're taking 6 days out of that, some period that you could go and work, in essence, okay? So we believe educationally it's definitely a better experience for all of the students, but it does mean that you'll only have 5 weeks that you can work as an IWork student full-time in that summer. Although, and we're working with PCC especially to help preserve this, we're fine if during the breaks between the semesters, you work, whether it's between winter and summer, there's a week there, or between summer and fall, there's a week there, and certainly over the Christmas break, there's more often than not, there's 3 weeks there. So it will be a slight reduction in the overall amount of time they can work full time by that 1 week.
Just to follow up, can you still work 25 hours for the sessions?
Yeah, as far as I know, that is possible. What we'll need to look at though is the requirement will change, because to do that you would have to have registered for at least 12 credits to qualify to do it. So if you had some kind of obviously I can think of a lot of scenarios where you could create this such that you could do it. But if your classes weren't so demanding and you could fit it in, then there's no reason that I know of, the INS rules, Homeland Security rules, all that, it doesn't preempt us from allowing you to do that 1 semester a year. And so we would be fine. The only thing we would caution, and we talk about this a fair amount in the administration, even though we want the students to work as much as they can and help pay for their own education, we don't ever want to do it to the expense that they have less of an education, because your primary reason to be here is obviously to get a good education. So we want to balance that, but I think the answer is still yes, you can do that. Dave? Go ahead.
If you give teachers the option of either having a bridge course over let's say spring, if you give them the option of doing that or teaching the whole class in 7 weeks, could that potentially mean that you have 5 classes for the first 7 weeks and then 2 classes or 1 class even for the bridge?
Yeah, I have a couple of departments. Jennifer's already, they've looked and told us how they're probably going to do their summer. And when I looked at the patterns, there's one department, I'm not going to rat on them because they still have a chance to change this, but there's one department that probably is going to do about 80% of their courses are going to be bridge courses, okay? The other 3 departments I looked at looked like they'll have a ratio of about 5 courses in the first session to 4 or 3 courses in the second session. So we probably initially wouldn't force them to say it has to be half and half, but I probably would say it has to be close, never beyond 60-40. And I think it makes maybe a little sense to put it a little heavier in the first session. I'm okay with that. but there's got to be some balance there. Otherwise, we put the students in a difficult challenge trying to fill a schedule. So we'll watch that. If it looks like we really have to make it so that it's half and half, we'll do it half and half. But I think we can go 60-40 and still work. The real question will be then, in fact, I'll tell you what the biggest question we're dealing with today. I'm dealing with a lot of questions today. One of the biggest questions is actually how to schedule classes in summer. Because see, right now, most of your classes go for a 2-hour block, right? 3 days a week or whatever. Well, if we have bridge classes now that go for 1 hour, how do we incorporate those two together? So, now, mind you, I love puzzles. And so we'll get this down. I'm not thinking we won't get it down, but we're going to have to figure out how to schedule those, because obviously you can see you can't, the potential problem we'll have, I know we'll have this problem, irrespective of our schedule, is a student will come in and say, well, I have scheduled to take statistics at 9 o'clock Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I want to also take music, and it starts at 9 o'clock and goes to 11 o'clock on Mondays and Wednesdays. And they're going to try to say, can I do both classes? You know, I mean, I've had students ask me that, and I've said, only if you're Hermione Granger can you do both classes, okay? You can't do that. So we're trying to figure out how to accommodate those as best we can. That's one of our really big challenges. But yes?
So, for the summer, between the two sections, if you're taking session classes, is it considered a full section only take 12 credits each, or is it divided?
Okay, yeah, total. And yeah, so the whole summer, in fact, for some people it's easier to think about spring just a little bit. Like, okay, in the spring, a lot of schools have a spring break, right? And just because you have a spring break in the middle, you don't really stop the semester. It's just you have a break in the spring. Well, that's how summer is. Even though there's a break in the middle, you don't stop the semester. It's still a full semester. So all of the rules apply to the whole semester. Good question. David?
What about the internship? Many are 10 weeks, from 12 to 8. How does that happen?
Yeah, we're still wrestling a little bit with internships. We're very committed to internships, so obviously we are going to find ways to accommodate students to take internships. I can imagine quite a few scenarios. Everything from, I mean, if they choose to be gone for a whole semester, we're okay with that. They'll sign up for 3 credits of internship, and obviously they just have to factor that into their map. So they'll just have to factor that in. But I can also imagine that a student could come and if they were to take, let's say they took 6 credits in the first session of summer, and they also signed up then for internship credits of 3 credits. Well, we would work that with them, even though they're a part-time student, we would work with them if they then took from the end of the first session all the way until fall started to do an internship. We're happy to do that, so we know that will fit. And the inverse would fit also. You might could start in April and go to July on your internship, then come back and take a few more classes after that. Okay, any others? Yeah, 1 or 2. Yes?
I remember in the past, when they first had the schedule changed to having 3 terms, I remember hearing the teachers in class complain a lot because they didn't agree or they thought that the terms were now too short. Do you find that now with this change and dealing with faculty that they're a lot more receptive to this, or are they kind of like iffy about it?
Great question. You know how to really put a guy on the spot. I've even got faculty out here, so they can, maybe I should have them ask that question. Let me tell a little bit about the process. We've been working on this for a year, over a year in fact, I think. To be really honest, it's been almost 18 months, I think, when we actually really started. And we've had some periods where we literally took all the faculty into the OHA Center over here and asked them to help us. So they've been invited to completely be involved with the process. We've told them the challenges, we've told them the problems. We did focus groups with students, the very things that you're kind of asking students told us before. So they've been very much involved. I think the majority of the faculty understand the problem and they think this is an acceptable solution. Can you find faculty that will disagree? Absolutely. You know, and I mean that's the nature of it. I love working with faculty. I just have to tell you, but you have to be insane to want to be an academic vice president. You know, you pick the brightest people in the world, and every one of them is independent, has their own opinion, and you get to manage them. You know, so I mean, it's just wonderful life, I guess. So. Yes.
With the internships being flexible with them, is that also going to be the same policies with student teaching for those that are in that one?
Yeah. Obviously, student teaching is set up to be the last semester, so it's actually easier. So literally, you know, if you're going to be here for, let's say, 9 semesters to get your education, it's the last semester. So it, by definition, has to be winter or fall, because summer the schools aren't in session, but we're okay with that either way. So, I mean, obviously we'll have to look at the specifics. Marilee's not here, she's the expert on this, but I don't think it should create any kind of an impediment for a student. The worst thing I could imagine that could occur is you could kind of finish all of your coursework in winter semester and not be able to start your student teaching until like in August. You know, so you have maybe a gap there before you can start student teaching your last semester out. But it's not like we would, you know, kick you out of your housing or anything like that. As long as we know you're heading towards student teaching, we'll work with you. Okay, well I think that's probably good. I know I'm sweating and worn out, so thank you. Brothers and sisters, I hope you have a sense of why. I really started with the why because it's very, very important, I think, that we understand the why. You know, this isn't something that we're cooking up, and although there's some impact with it, just to keep this less expensive. That's not the only reason, okay? The most important reason, by far, at least twice as important as the cost, is there are so many young people out there that want to come here and to the other BYUs. We have to do whatever we can to find ways to help all of you have a great experience here. So in some regards, we're asking you to sacrifice. But I can guarantee that your sacrifice is blessing another student because they'll be able to come here because of what you're willing to help do with us. It's interesting, I'll just end with kind of this. We spent about the last 6 months wrestling with whether we should use a tracking system. Now, are any of you former BYU Idaho students? Okay, BYU Idaho has a tracking system. It's phenomenal, works great, wonderful. I wrestled, and to be really honest, I can't figure out how to make it work here. And the main reason why is because our international students, you know, they don't have the means to go home. And if housing is your limiting factor, what value does it to have them track in the classrooms if they can't go home? But we spent 6 months on it. We actually could do it. We figured out we could do it. But we figured out that the level of complexity with it was enough that we would prefer to just really work with the 3-year program. And if students and faculty never know, if we all work together, we think we still can accomplish what we need without tracking students in and out, because that is just a lot of work. It's very complex. So, again, thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. Good luck with your teachers. If they're not giving you enough homework, just let me know. I'll be happy to talk to them, and we'll see you.
Thank you, Brother Shiggins, for answering all the questions, and thank you everyone for coming. I know it's an hour out of your time, but we really appreciate that you're concerned about the future of this school. So, if there's any more questions, if you guys look at the back of your schedules for handing out, there is an email, Sacramento Hours, and it's a service that the Student Advisory Council has put up. So if you have anything related to school and you have questions, feel free to ask, and we'll answer you guys in hours. So I'll be closing with a prayer.
I don't know, this is right now, it's fun.
Dearly Father, thank you so much for this day that we could be here in Hawaii, and that Brother Chickens could be so kind to explain the new academic terms, structural changes. Goodness that you'll bless the students that will do well in midterms and our academics and our spiritual and social life, and that you'll help us be more like Christ. And I say this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ.
18 hours.